Welcome back, everyone, to the 2-on-1 Fast Break podcast. I'm Sean Kennedy, and I'm joined once again for another year of exciting NFL action by Dan Erta, our NFL site handicapper. Dan, we're less than a week away from actual NFL football. You love preseason more than anybody I know, but even you have to be excited to see some actual meaningful regular season games.
Like, you're talking about meaningful regular season games. Meanwhile, while we're watching on TV right now, probably the most meaningful football game I've ever seen in my life. The Matt Barkley, Tim Tebow, who's going to win the third-string quarterback for the Eagles Super Bowl.
That's very true. The podcast will be posted on Friday, so we might actually know the answer to that by the time it's up.
We knew the answer yesterday. It's Tebow.
They're cutting them both. Neither of them are very good. You don't need three quarterbacks. You can pick somebody else up if you get a guy hurt.
But your point is well taken. This is a great feeling. Everyone has that excitement. Even if you're a fan of a bad team, the season's just about to start, and everybody just loves it. There's nothing more you could say. The weather is it's starting to go from 96 degrees to 95 degrees, so we have that going for us.
A lot cooler. We turned the fan off in here, so hopefully we can last throughout the duration of the podcast. But we'll do our best. And for those of you who are new to the podcast, the format is basically we talk about Dan's plays for the week. Hopefully he wins more than he loses. Last year it didn't quite work out that way.
I'm still banking on that 2013 run I had, but last year was not very good.
Yeah, 2 years ago, hovering close to 70% against the spread, so that was pretty exemplary. But last year, not so much. So hoping for better things in 2015. But anyway, we're gonna get to the week one lines on next week's podcast. So this week we're gonna do some futures talk. We're gonna do some over-unders we like, some player props, and just kind of dip our toes into the NFL betting waters.
Exactly. We're just easing our way in. These preseason plays are fun, but if you're being realistic, you don't want to make giant plays on season totals and giant plays on player props. You never know who's going to get hurt. You never know if a team's going to be exactly what you think they're going to be. And just overall, it's way too unpredictable. So there's some value, and you want to make some money, but this isn't where you stick your 5-unit wagers.
Right. It's always better to have more information at hand, and when you're betting on a weekly basis, you're going to have much more information than you are trying to project out for a 17-week season for these 16-game schedules. So we're going to talk about it. Potential injuries are something that you're going to factor in when you're making your futures, but just the fact that they're out there and a possibility, you got to scale things back a little bit.
Yeah, and when I make my futures, I make the assumption that I assume health. I assume health, and I assume no one's going to get hurt. The big detriment with futures is that you're tying up your money. If you have a bookie and you can bet on credit, I think futures are a lot better than that, because then it's just the end of the year. You win or lose, you get paid or you pay. But if you have an online book, you have to put that money up front. So let's say in what month is it right now? September. In July, I love San Francisco under 7.5 wins, and I put a really, really good amount of money on that because I have a local, and I know I'm not going to have to pay that kind of money until the season's over. But if you're betting that online, let's say you want to bet $1,000 on that under, that's $1,000 of your money that's tied up over the course of 5 or 6 months.
Right.
And that's incredibly inconvenient, and it's not efficient. So that's why a lot of people don't really love these preseason bets. I think they're fun. I think they're worth doing. I think there is value in some of them, but these are not the same full unit kind of plays that we're going to have throughout the regular season.
I also like how I'll sometimes forget about them, and then at the end of the season, I'll $80 will pop up in my account.
Well, that's because you have an online book.
Right.
If you have a bookie, negative $80 could pop up in your account.
Exactly.
And you'd be like, shit, how drunk was I when I bet the Jets over 6 wins?
Right, yeah. So I guess it's a double-edged sword. But, hopefully it's more adding to your account than negatives showing up.
That is our goal.
Yeah. So we'll get started, and I think you have a good list written out for us to discuss, and I have a few plays as well. So we'll kind of go back and forth and just give some quick thoughts on why we like it and agree or disagree with each play, and just hopefully come up with some winners for you guys out there. So the first one you liked was Denver under 10.5, and that's going off at minus 135. So tell us why you don't like Denver this year.
I mean, I don't want to be like one of those guys who buys into all the narratives and all, but Peyton Manning really looks like something changed last year, late in the season. He's getting older every single year, and I just don't think like he can still throw that fade. He can still put that ball where he wants to put it, but something in his arm is gone. And I think that he's in a very tough division. They have a pretty tough schedule. And I just think that a 10-6 record is a very best case scenario for this team right now. They have a lot of injuries on defense. They lost Julius Thomas. They lost a weapon there. And I just think that their goal this year is to make the playoffs with a 10-6 record. So to take under 10.5, I'm very happy to do so.
I agree with you to a point. I don't think the offense is going to be quite what it has been the first couple of years. Manning's been there for the reasons you mentioned. I think age and wear and tear on his body. He's not going to be nearly as effective as he has been in the past. And I agree that I would say 11-5 is kind of the ceiling, which you're getting 10.5. That's great. If I don't think 12-4 is a realistic possibility for them. So I kind of think they have a very limited range of win totals. They're either going to be somewhere between 9 and 11. So,
and they're also one of those teams.
I think their defense is just too good for them to completely collapse. I think the defense is going to be really good for them this year.
I agree, and I think Peyton Manning is still going to be able to throw the necessary passes to win enough games to make the playoffs. I think they're a good team, but I don't think this is a superstar team, and I think that the line is inflated by that half point. Really, and that. It's very rare that you look at a half point to be that big of a deal, but in this case, I think this is a 10-16.
Well, I think with win totals, the half point is
exactly
that's huge.
It's not like a over under where it's like 52 versus 52 and a half. And I also think Denver's a public team because the public loves Peyton Manning, and the public thinks that Demaryius Thomas is awesome because who hasn't owned him in a fantasy league and won that league because of him? He is fantastic, but people love this team because of their reputation. So they're going to lean towards the over, and I'm gonna go towards the under here because I think this team is a 9 or 10 win team.
All right, fair enough. So let's go to one of mine that I like this year, and I'm very high on Baltimore. I like them at over 9.5 wins, and I also like them to win the AFC North, which is going off at plus 150. The over's at plus 105. Reasoning for that, I think. The Pouncey injury for Pittsburgh is really going to hurt them.
Center.
And
center injuries are terrible.
Yeah, it's the anchor for the entire line. He's calling out all the protections. And then Martavius Bryant is now suspended for the first 4 games. And their defense last year was atrocious. They made a few pickups in free agency and tried to bolster through the draft, but they're still not going to be very good defensively. And, obviously Ben and Antonio Brown, and when Bell comes back after 2 weeks, they're going to have a good offense, but I don't think I think they're going to be around 8-8, 9-7. I think Cincy's going to do their usual look good sometimes, bungle everything up others, and then I'm not really worried about the Browns. And I think the Ravens had a top 10 defense as far as defensive DVOA last year. C.J. Mosley's only going to get better. They're going to have Jimmy Smith back there healthy in the secondary. I think the defense is still going to be tremendous. I'm worried they don't have a lot of options at receiver, but that's not really what their offense is built around. So
it's so crazy that division is so weird because I could see the Ravens winning, I could see the Pittsburgh Steelers winning, and I guess I could see the Bengals winning because they seem to have been winning it in the past. But based on everything you said, I really like that. I think it's a good play. I think Cincy is going to have a really bad year. I think it's going to be embarrassing for them. I think Marvin Lewis is finally going to get fired. But I do think Pittsburgh's a threat. But you're in a 2-team race and you're getting those kind of odds. I like it.
Yeah, that's the thing. This and I think the NFC South are the only 2 divisions where there's not really a clear-cut favorite.
Correct.
So when you're looking for value, like something where you don't have to lay a lot of juice or heavy odds on a favorite, this is one of the few spots you can actually look. And I agree, Pittsburgh is a good team, but they have a lot of tenuous situations where if they have one major injury, they're done. Pittsburgh. Whereas, and I think the Ravens are just more balanced throughout the 53-man roster. So, like I said, I can certainly see other teams winning it, but that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for teams where I'm still getting pretty good value for a team I think is going to win and not have to lay like minus 250 odds on something.
And they've proven over and over again they're one of those teams that their organization just has such power that
right.
They always put together a really good team. Even if they're lacking in one area, they'll make up for it in another. Like, they're never a bad team.
Yeah. All right. So that was one of mine. Let's go back to one of yours. And we might actually disagree on this one. You like Oakland at over 6 wins, and that's at minus 110. So basically even odds on Oakland over 6. Talk about that one.
I look at it as a free roll because I think worst case scenario they are 6-10 this year. I would not be surprised if they were 6-10 this year, and we push this bet, and I get my money back, and it's completely squared, and that's great. I don't see them winning 5 games. They're too good. They have a second-year Derek Carr. They have you made a look at me like you don't think that's very good. I
don't think anyone in the last 15 years since maybe Rich Gannon was there has the sentence, the Raiders are just too good.
And you'll see this in another one of my season win totals. I love going against perceptions. The perceptions is Oakland's terrible. They're a horrible team. No one wants to go there. They're just bad from top to bottom. But they've done a lot of good things. They've done good things on defense. They've done a lot of really good things on offense. They have a really good running back who I'm a huge fan of this year, Latavius Murray. If you look at the receiving core, it's actually funny. They were joking about this on Matthew Berry's podcast, the Fantasy Focus Now podcast. Like, Raiders fans think they have, like, the deepest wide receiver core in the league.
Former Temple Owl, Rod Streeter.
He was, like, their 5th receiver.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous to say it in that way, but the way you can say it is that there's no weak link. Like, even Bryce Butler, the number 3 receiver, I've been waiting to break out for a long time. I really think they're going to put up points. I think they're going to win a couple games that they can't. It's a very hard home stadium to win in. So when teams come to Oakland, even if they're better than the Raiders, they're still fighting an uphill battle because it's a very tough place to play. I think there's a good chance they go 6-10, a decent chance they go 7-9, and a very, very poor chance that they go 5-11. So I'm willing to take this over, thinking that the worst case scenario I push.
Okay. I hate this, and here's why. I cannot see a scenario where they go 7-9. They have the Chargers, Chiefs, and Broncos all in their division.
Who scares you on those teams?
They're all clearly better than the Raiders are in my mind.
Alex Smith scares you?
The Chiefs have a great defense. They brought in Macklin. They have Charles. I think their offense is going to be a middle-of-the-road offense, and they have a very good defense.
They're a middle-of-the-road team.
Yeah, they're going to be around 8-8, 9-7. There's not a team in that division that's going to be 6-10 or worse, except for the Raiders.
I disagree. I agree with what you're saying, that the division is so middling that everyone's going to go towards that middle. I completely agree with that, but I think the Raiders are part of that. And I think they're going to end up 7-9. I think Alex Smith goes into Oakland, he's going to throw 3 picks.
I mean, yeah, the Raiders aren't going to lose every game, but I can't possibly see them going 7-9. So the fact that it's at 6 and not 5.5, because I think 6-10, sure, they could go 6-10. They've done some nice things. Khalil Mack's an absolute beast.
He's a monster,
but they don't have a lot around him defensively. It's basically him, and their secondary is atrocious. And then, yeah, Amari Cooper looks like a stud, but Derek Carr, he was okay as a rookie, but I'm not ready to anoint him as a quarterback that can lead like as a
team to a 7-9 record.
Yeah, I don't think he's ready for that. I think they still need to make some moves and improve the roster around him to get him in a position to do that.
I think if you look at that roster top to bottom, including defense, including special teams, including everything, I think it's a very well balanced roster. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people, and I don't like their division. I think when Denver comes to Oakland, I am not writing that off as a Denver win right now.
All right, well. Yeah, well, we disagree on that one. I think 6-10 a best case scenario.
I think it's a worst case scenario.
So-
And honestly, to be honest, let's cut our losses. This is probably a most likely scenario, and this is probably going to be a push.
Well, Vegas knows what they're doing. They set the lines where they do for a reason. All right, so yeah, we disagree on that one. Let's go to one we both agree on because we both had it listed, and that's the Eagles over 9.5. So you had it at minus 160. I actually, on one of my books, I saw it at minus 145. And
Well, I have a local who likes to screw us out of our money. So.
yeah, he knows it's going to be a lot of Eagles favoritism around here, so trying to bump that line up a little bit. But I also looked, and Eagles to make the playoffs is minus 150.
That's even less.
Right, it's less than
I
what
could
you
do
had.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I did that math in my head.
Yeah,
I just realized that minus 150 is less than minus 160.
That's why you're an expert capper. that sort of instant analysis. But yeah, let's talk about why we both like the Eagles at 9.5.
Keep in mind, we're both Eagles homers.
But
This team looks so good.
they really do. And it's not like every year Chip's been here, he's won 10 games. And I think this is the best team he's had since.
So we're
he's been in
betting against them
Philadelphia.
falling off.
Even though we both think they're going to improve. I think the defense is going to be a lot better. Alonzo and Kendricks at linebacker is going to cover the entire field
Yes.
together as a tandem. It's the best secondary they've had since Chip's been here. And the line is one of the top lines in the league between Cox and Logan up front, stuff in the run. I think Brandon Graham's going to have a great year rushing the passer, and they go about 7 deep on the line. I think the defense is going to be outstanding, and Bradford looks like he has great control of the offense so far from what we've seen in preseason. And even if he doesn't pan out, like he gets hurt, like
He's not going to not pan out. He might get hurt.
Right.
He's not going to not pan out.
That's what I meant. Like, let's say the Bradford as the Eagles quarterback throughout the season doesn't pan out.
If Sanchez started all 16 games, I still like the over.
He got 10 wins last year,
Yeah.
pretty much. So, he got the Eagles to 10 wins last year. I'm not part of the team, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I don't think we really need to touch too much more on that. I think
There's been plenty talked about and written about the Eagles.
right. So Eagles over 9.5. My only concern is it seems too easy. So
I know, and it scares me that they have that as the number because
Right.
it's like, do they know? Or do they think they're gonna? Do they think the Eagles are gonna suck?
very fishy. All right, so let's go to your final team total. You like Jacksonville over 5.5, and I guess it's going to be a lot of the same kind of discussion we had with Oakland. But why don't you go ahead with the Jags?
Well, it really sucks because obviously we're not going to have this podcast and discuss season totals 4 months before the season starts. But my San Francisco under 7.5 bet it is the biggest bet I've ever made in my life.
And they're down to 6 now.
They're down to 6.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to give that bet now because that's a scumbag thing to do. Be like, oh, well, I got it at 7.5, so I'm going to say that.
Yeah.
So it sucks because there's a winner that I could have given you, but we don't do this podcast in the off season, nor should we.
Well, we could if we had more listeners.
Eh.
Tell your friends.
Yeah, it's your fault, guys.
Yeah.
But another total this is my second favorite one of the entire board. Jacksonville over 5.5. I love this team. I love everything about this team. I think, like,
You're on board with Blake Bortles?
I'm on board. I'm on board with Bortles. Give me a shirt that says that.
Okay.
If anything, and I don't want this because I love good things from football, but if anything were to happen to Andrew Luck, and the Colts weren't that much of a success, I could see them making a run at the division. This is a really good team. They're deep. They have a great defense. They have great lines. And I really love Allen Robinson as a breakout player. I think him and Bortles have a really good chemistry. Even the other receivers they have in Alan Hearns, Mercedes Lewis is a tight end, and they have a rookie running back who, if nothing else, is going to be solid. I don't know if T.J. Elton's going to be a superstar, but I don't think he's going to go the route of Trent Richardson either. This team is really, really solid, and just because they're the Jaguars, this line is so low, because they're the Jaguars.
All right, I got to slow your roll a little bit.
Slow my roll, because I'm really excited about this team.
Yeah, the defense that you're saying is so great was in the bottom half of the league last year in defensive DVOA.
they're on the field at all times last year.
That gets factored in to DVOA. I'm not talking about like points per game or yardage per game or
Okay.
anything. That's an efficiency thing. And I know that you're on the field more, you're more prone to get tired maybe, but
Exactly, and perform worse.
sure. But their guy that was supposed to help improve the pass rush, he's Dante Fowler. He is out for the year, so
Right.
they didn't improve through the draft like they were hoping to do. So I don't see how the defense is going to make meaningful improvements. So at best, they're a middle of the road squad, and then offensively, I mean
I love them offensively.
they have some good weapons on the outside. I'll give you that, and the running backs should be improved with hopefully Yeldon and Denard Robinson showed some things last year, but the O line didn't protect Bortles well at all last year. I don't see how that. Hopefully they'll be a little better this year, but it's not going to be a good line. And honestly, Bortles he hasn't done anything to show us he's a great quarterback yet. Maybe he will be, but
There was a
we
time.
haven't really seen it yet.
There was a time in football when you were drafted as a quarterback, you were not expected to be a superstar that year you were drafted.
And that's fair. And I'm not saying he can't be.
And I'm not saying that he wasn't a reach at number 3 when they took him, but I like him. He has an arm. He kind of reminds me of Flacco a little bit with his arm. He's not one of the,
He's got a big downfield arm.
and his accuracy was the issue last year. And preseason means nothing. I know that, but he's looked a lot better this year. In the preseason, it looks like he has a really good connection with his receivers. I think TJ Yeldon's going to play a really big role in this offense. If he is terrible and a huge bust, then it might be a huge problem. Because I think Denard Robinson got some play as an every down back last year, but that's not his role in the NFL. He's the speed guy. He's the third down kind of guy. I just think this team is really good. I think they're a lot better. And 5.5 is insulting. Because let's say they're 6-10, which is still a pretty damn bad team. That wins my bet. And I'm happy with that.
Right. So I don't hate this like I hated the Oakland for that reason. I think, yeah, they can. Tennessee's really bad, and they're in the division. They get 2
They
games
played
against
twice,
them.
yeah.
Houston doesn't have a good quarterback situation. They could easily win one of those games. So, yeah, 6-10, sure, I could see that happening. But I could also see everything going to pot and then having a 4-12 season. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. I think that's a pretty realistic thing. Again, whereas Oakland, I was dead set against it. Jacksonville, this is more of a stay away. I think it could really go either way. I think that's a pretty appropriate line. I don't see a lot of value there. So, I mean, you love these underdogs this season. So
I love betting value, and I think that public perception factors into the value. And I think the fact that people think the Jaguars suck, people think the Raiders suck, and that factors into the line movement. Because remember, Vegas
Sure.
just wants to get even money on both sides.
right, yeah, I see where you're coming from, but in the last 5 minutes, you said Oakland is way too good and the Jacksonville defense is great. So
I didn't say they're great.
you did. People listening at home, you can. I can't rewind right now, but people listening at home can rewind about 2 minutes.
They're much improved. Much improved. They're not great.
All right, so
Don't pick them up in your fantasy league or anything.
no, you heard it here first.
If
Top 5 fantasy.
you were
defense.
going to pick up Jacksonville,
you need to listen to some other podcasts aside from this one and get.
but they're going to win 6 or 7 games. They might even win 8 games. Who
All right.
knows?
So that's the over-unders for us. I was on Baltimore over 9.5, as well as the Eagles not over 9.5. You're on the Eagles as well, and you liked Denver under 10.5, Jacksonville over 5.5, and Oakland over 6. So real quick now, we're going to do some player props. We're a little low on time, so we're just going to say which ones I'm going to read out aloud which ones you like, and then give us about 15-20 seconds on why you like it.
Sure.
I'll do the same with my picks, and then we can react if we have
That's fine.
anything.
And the
to
questions
say.
we're going to answer we'll do next week because I won't have this many plays for week 1.
We'll see. We could probably get the questions in. We'll see. Carve out some time. Always got to carve out some time for the listeners. So, first one you have Julio. Sorry, my handwriting's awful. Julio Jones over 1,300 receiving yards.
I just have a feeling this is the year that he becomes a superstar. All he has to do is stay healthy. They don't really have a great running back committee right now. It's Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman, which they're going to try to get by with. But let's be real, they're going to try to pass the ball a lot. I just think this is Julio's year to really be like, I'm a top 3 receiver in the NFL. This is less than 100 yards per game. I think as long as he stays healthy, he goes way over this total.
I
It's
agree.
a high total.
I agree. It's very very reachable for him. They got that new offense where, much like Andre Johnson over the years, it feeds the number one receiver.
Yes. The number 2 receivers
Often.
is, I guess, Roddy White, but it's like
Right.
it's him, Roddy White, and Leonard Hankerson.
Yeah, they're definitely going to go to Julio a lot. It's just a really high total. He's had some injury concerns in the past, so for that's just more of a philosophic thing for me. Just staying away from high totals where either injury or underperformance could kind of play into it.
I don't think underperformance is a chance. I think
Right.
I think injury is a chance,
Right.
and I do not think.
I mean, say he
underperformance is a chance.
misses 2 games and he has 1,200 yards. Is anybody going to say that was a bad season? No, but it's. I agree with you. He's primed for a huge year. The talent's certainly there. All right, we'll go to your next one. Jonathan Stewart, over 850 rushing yards.
He's the guy. He's finally the guy. He was a very talented draft pick. He's had a couple of really, really good years. And then it became clear that him and D'Angelo Williams worked best as a tandem. And that's how it went for so long. So he developed a reputation as a guy you stay away from in fantasy, a guy you stay away from in any kind of like wagering, things like this, just because they had that tandem. And that tandem's gone now. Now he's the man. The last couple of years of the season, he really showed that he can handle that load. Not only can he handle it, he can be a star. And this is kind of like Roddy White, where the only thing I'm scared of is injury. Because, I mean, right now their number 1 receiver is Devin Funchess, so they're clearly going to run the ball a lot. And they can, with Cam Newton as a running threat that draws defenses, makes them a little bit weary. There's going to be holes open for him. As long as he can stay healthy. If he can be healthy for 16 games, this is one of the easier bets I've ever seen. But the only question is the reason it is that, because who knows if he's going to be able to stay healthy for that long.
Yeah, Stewart's always had injury concerns. I also don't like how their line is just terrible. It's easily one of the bottom 5 offensive lines in the league.
I'm hoping that Newton's mobility kind of neutralizes that aspect of it. Their line is terrible.
Yeah, Benjamin out. People are going to be stacking the box against the run. But again, it's only 850 yards.
Yeah, they have.
If he stays healthy, that's an achievable total.
60 yards a game?
Yeah. All right, I'm fine with that. I also looked at his touchdown total earlier today, and it was
Touchdowns are fluky.
5.5. But yeah, that's
Touchdowns
fluky.
are fluky. Because Cam Newton's going to run. Cam Newton's going to run.
Cam takes a lot of the goal line stuff, so that's probably why it's also a little low. All right, and then you have next one moving along, Matthew Stafford, over 26.5 touchdowns.
I like this. I don't know how I can really elaborate on this other than the fact that I think that this is a big year for him. I think it's a big year for Calvin Johnson to come back. And they just have they have like 3 tight ends who are going to get meaningful time. They have rookie Amir Abdullah, who he's a running back, but I think a lot of his damage is going to be done catching passes out of the backfield, and those are all going to go towards Stafford's total. I think it's more than possible that he averages two touchdowns per game.
Yeah, I'm fine with this. He's surpassed that total 2 of the last 4 seasons, so it's an appropriate line given.
And I
what
think he's
done
had
in the past.
down years. I still don't think we've seen the best of Matt Stafford in the NFL.
But I just think, I think he is what he is at this point.
They also have a
but I think
sick defense.
this is the best group around him he's ever had. He's got hopefully a healthy Calvin. They brought in Golden Tate. We saw what he could add to the offense last year. You mentioned Abdullah as the receiving threat to kind of approximate what Reggie Bush did. And then hopefully, Eric Ebron puts it together and can actually contribute from the tight end position. So I think, I don't see a situation where he's not going to be at least close to that. So It's fine in my eyes. I think that's,
you heard it here first. It's fine. It's a fine bet.
It's a fine bet. That's all you're looking for is just.
I don't think we've seen the ceiling of Matt Stafford, NFL quarterback, yet.
I think we did. It was when he had 41 touchdowns.
I understand that, but those were Matt Stafford touchdowns. Those were Calvin Johnson touchdowns.
Right.
Those are touchdowns he was throwing them. Like, he has not really had a year where
it's years. I think it's year 7 for him. I don't think there's a lot of growth in the Matt Stafford game.
And Johnson's healthy now. Like, even when there have been a lot of times where he's been playing where he still wasn't even healthy. He was just on the field as a decoy.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's certainly, if I had to pick a side, I'd definitely go with the over.
And I'm always down with going with the over with quarterbacks, with the way the game's going.
Sure, yeah. So it's the way the league's trending.
Exactly.
And speaking of which, your last pick is another over touchdowns for a quarterback.
We're going back to the Jaguars.
Blake Bortles, over 16.5.
I mean, I would have taken Allen Robinson over 16.5 touchdowns receiving. So.
I mean, with the Jags going to the Super Bowl this year and everything, I figure their quarterback's going to have a touchdown a game.
I'm doubling down. I love this team. I love the offense. I'm not going to lie and act like I know a lot about team defense. I know a good amount, but not the amount that I know about offense. I think this offense is really, really well balanced. I just don't see a weak link. I'd rather see a team where I don't see a weak link on offense than a team where there's like one superstar and wide receiver, but there's nobody else. I really like this. I think he's looked really good. And not really good because he beats up second and third string defenses in preseason good. He's looked good because his ball looks tight. He looks like his ball has zip on it. If you ever, like, you hear people talk about the eye test, and then you hear other journalists say that the eye test is such a hacky thing to say, but I disagree with that. He's passed the eye test to me. I've watched him a lot this preseason. I think he's gonna. What was the total again?
16.5.
1 touchdown pass per game.
I know. That's the only reason I can't say anything bad about it. It's so low.
And also, if you don't like the Jaguars and you think they're not going to be a good team, that means there's going to be a lot of prevent defense, a lot of garbage time throws there for him.
I mean, I can't get behind
this. He has one game where he throws 3 touchdowns, and he's way ahead of the curve here.
He's almost a quarter of the way there.
Yes.
Yeah. I know. It's so low, but there's a reason it's really low.
That's right, because he's the Jaguars quarterback, and the public perception is that he's not good.
Yeah, okay.
The thing is, people don't realize up until the year that Matt Ryan and Joe Flacco came into the league, they both were forced into starting roles right away, and they both had really good success right away. That changed everything. Before that, there was a time where quarterbacks were drafted to hold the clipboard for 1, maybe even 2 years. You weren't supposed to be good right away. You weren't supposed to be able to read NFL defenses right away. You weren't supposed to be able to pick them apart. And it was okay because it took time. And then, like, in recent years, because there's been a couple rookies who've had success, people have kind of jumped the gun and been like, oh, this guy's a bust because he didn't take the team to the playoffs in his first 2 years or his first year or whatever. I think Blake Bortles is a good quarterback, and I think if you're judging him based on last year, I think that's a misguided notion.
All right, you love the Jags.
I love the Jags.
All right,
and I have no reason to love the Jags. Like, it's not like I'm biased in any way, shape, or form. I just like the team. I think I have high hopes for them.
You're drinking the Jag juice.
Absolutely.
All right, so we got just enough time. We're going to get to one question, and before we head out, so
we got to head out soon because Tebow's about to get on the field.
Yeah, it's very important stuff. This is from one of our listeners, Jeff Camlin. He sent a few questions. We'll try to get to 1 or 2 of his other ones on our next podcast, but one of them was, is the Eagles to win a Super Bowl a smart bet right now? And right now they're going off at plus 800. Dan, what are your thoughts?
Well, let me give you an analogy here. Western Michigan tonight is minus 2.5 at Vanderbilt. And I think it's a good bet. I think they're going to win the game handily. However, when the lines opened up a couple months ago, because books open up lines really early for the degenerate gamblers.
Sure.
Western Michigan was plus 16.
That's a big swing.
So I like them at minus 1.5 this week. I really think they're going to win the game. I think they're going to win by a touchdown or more. But it's like, can I really take them now that all the swing has gone so far in this direction? Like, if they lose by 3 points, I'd be so mad at myself that I could have had it at a better line.
Right.
I kind of feel like that's how the Eagles are right now. After Sam Bradford's performance last week, the line has jumped so far that now they're the fourth or fifth highest
Right.
Super Bowl ranked team. So right now, would I take them for the Super Bowl? No, because the line doesn't show any value now.
Yeah.
If anything, the line's inflated now just because of the preseason performance. If you would ask me this 2 months ago when the Eagles were plus 2,300 and Western Michigan was plus 17, I would have said yes to both of those bets. So I think they absolutely have a chance to win the Super Bowl, but part of this whole betting thing is value, and right now you're not getting the best value on that bet.
I think you're the only guy that could equate the Eagles to Western Michigan.
I thought it was a great analogy.
It made perfect sense. You hit the nail on the head though. It's all about the fact that they're being priced out as one of the 4 or 5 favorites right now, which they may well be, but that's as high as they could be. You're not getting any value. Whereas before they were a middle of the pack team, and there was room to exceed that. Right now, you're paying for a best case scenario with the odds that they're priced at right now.
When Ohio State lost their game last year, they were like plus 5,000 to win the national championship. And then as they started winning and winning and winning, they got smaller and smaller. And sure, you could have jumped on them then, but that's not peak value. And the whole point of gambling is the same thing as like betting the stock market is you want peak value. So this is not peak value for the Eagles. And you're talking to a huge Eagles fan, a season ticket holder, a diehard who really, really, really wants them to win the Super Bowl. But if you weren't on them to win the Super Bowl up until now is not the time to jump in on it.
Right. They're not going to be. The odds aren't going to shift that much once the playoffs start.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be like plus 600, plus 500
If anything,
going into the playoffs.
If anything, hope that they go to Atlanta for week 1 and lose a tough matchup on the road Monday night and on the road, and the odds will go a lot more in your favor. And then bet them to win the Super Bowl then.
Exactly. So that concludes our initial podcast of the 2015 NFL season.
It's almost TiVo time.
Almost TiVo time, almost NFL regular season time. We're all very excited. We'll be back next week. We'll talk about the week 1 lines, and we'll get to some of the other questions out there and some other assorted topics. So thanks for listening, everybody, and enjoy the final week of preseason.
Great to be back.